my stopwatch here so I don't go over time. If you've met admissions representatives before, you know that we could really talk forever, so I'll keep us on task. Well, my name is Julie Chapman, and I am an admissions officer at Vanderbilt University. I'm very happy to be here. I have the incredibly difficult task of wrapping up U.S. college admissions into 5 or 6 minutes. So you're going to get a very brief introduction, and if there are questions that come, I'm happy to answer those for you later on or throughout the next couple of days. So as you may or may not be aware, there are about 5,000 colleges and universities in the United States. I think the exact number is about 4,725. So what that means is that there's a lot of different options that are out there and a lot of different admissions processes that are out there as well. You have community colleges, you have universities, you have public institutions, you have private institutions, and each has their own individual nuanced process at looking at admissions. So I'm going to give you a sense of what some of those kind of look like, but then also dig a little bit more into some of the different factors that are taken into account. So at some of these institutions, you're going to have what's called open enrollment. And that basically means that pretty much any student that applies will be offered admission to that institution. It's there so that students have open access to an academic education after high school, that they can really go on and pursue different fields and help them prep for whatever it is that they're interested in doing after they receive a degree. That could be vocational, that could be technical, that could be an associate's degree. So it's a great option. You also have some selective institutions, and those institutions will generally accept somewhere between 20 and 50% of the students apply. Generally, some of those schools will also practice what's called holistic admissions, and I'll dig a little bit deeper into that in just a minute. But another great option for students who are considering attending an institution, a little bit more access than some of the highly selective institutions like Vanderbilt that accept less than 20% of the students that apply. Those were really practicing holistic admissions, really taking into account different factors that students are submitting with their applications. Now, each of these different types of institution will have different applications that students can use. So one of the biggest takeaways that I want you to remember is that it's really important for students and for you to study the websites and really understand the way that students will apply and then what's considered at each of those different institutions. I think all of us are really good about putting that information out there so that it's clearly stated for students what they need to do in order to be admitted to our institution or even to apply. Now, the main factors that are going to be taken into account when applying to institutions are academics. We want to see what students have done. We want to see how they've performed within the context of your high school. We want to see the types of classes that they've taken. We know that some of the schools here in Canada might be different than the schools in the United States in terms of how the students are taking classes and what the curriculum is, and we understand that, and we'll work with you closely to make sure that we understand how qualified your students are as we're reviewing their applications for admission. We also are going to be looking at some standardized testing. Ben's going to talk a little bit about that in just a minute, so I'm not going to dig too far into that. But those are requirements that you'll want to keep in mind and make sure that your students are sitting for their tests in preparation for submitting their application for admission. Generally, students will also submit personal statements, and that can be something that's a little bit different and a little bit nerve-wracking for many students. If you ask students in the United States what they're most concerned about, I think a lot of them would say probably the standardized testing, but then second to that would be the personal statement. And basically, there's no right way to write one. And I think that's what causes a lot of the anxiety, that there's not really a specific format that they have to submit that in. But I bet if you were to ask admissions officers what their favorite parts of the applications would be, it would also be the personal statement. So keep that in mind when you're working with students, but basically we want to hear their voice and get a sense of who they are through that personal statement. We're also going to look at their activities. Many of those 5,000 colleges and universities in the United States are building communities on their campuses, and we want to see how students might contribute to our environments, our communities, and ways that they'll be involved, leadership opportunities that they might take advantage of, but get a sense of how they spend their time outside of the classroom in their high school experience. And then we also want to hear from you and some of the academic educators in your communities as well. So we ask for recommendation letters from the counselor as well as some teachers in the school, basically just to get a sense of how the student has contributed to the community, both academically, but outside of the classroom as well. So all of that's taken into account basically so that we can get a strong sense of how that student will fit. You'll hear in reference to colleges and universities in the United States, you'll hear the word fit used often. With all of those different options, there's not one that's better than the other, but rather it's more about making sure that your student is in an environment that will allow them to really grow and thrive throughout the 4 years that they're on that college campus. So I'm gonna wrap it up there, but look forward to any questions that you have about college admissions to the United States. Thank you.